Welcome back. In a previous video, I talked about how I think that Henry Cavill should focus on either Eisenhorn or Gaunts Ghosts. In the last video, we covered Eisenhorn. So in this video, drum roll, Gaunts Ghosts. Don't worry, even though they're part of the Imperial Guard, this video won't be buried under too many layers of flack. That was meant to be funny. It didn't really work, did it? Anyway, there goes the tumbleweed. As always, that wasn't funny either. I'm here to make Warhammer lore as easy and accessible as possible. So whether you're like brand new or you've been living and breathing Warhammer since the dawn of the Imperium, just feel free to drop some wisdom in those comments. Just make sure you keep it kind and helpful. We are building a positive and a supportive and a non-gatekeeping community here over on YouTube. And honestly, we're doing a pretty good job so far. If you want to be part of the best community of nerds on YouTube, then you are in the absolute right space. I don't know why I'm making this sound like an ad, but we're pretty cool. So just consider hitting that subscribe button. It does really help my YouTube channel, my YouTube journey, anything related to YouTube. What a surprise. But you also won't miss out on any of my chaotic lore deep dives, nerdy ramblings, or just my fun giveaways. Yes, someone did just win a Jacoki carry case because I do genuinely care about this community and I love you. Don't worry, you're not going to find me shoving affiliate links down your throat. Yeah, I said what I said. Just hold me now. Why am I thinking of Creed? I'm 6 feet from the edge and I'm thinking you're in the right place. Don't know where I'm going with this because all Warhammer fans are welcome. Anyway, that's me. Let's go. Gaunts Ghosts. It's like an awesome sci-fi book series set in the Warhammer 40k universe. Think massive, dark, gritty future where humanity is just constantly at war across the galaxy. This series is written by Dan Abnett. He's probably one of the most popular authors in the Warhammer, and Gaunts Ghost is published by the Black Library, which is basically the official publisher for all Warhammer fiction. This story follows a guy named Ibram Gaunt. He's kind of a mix between military leader, political officer. His title is Colonel-Commissar, which basically means he leads troops into battle and makes sure they stay loyal and motivated. He commands a group of soldiers known as the Tanith First and Only, and they're nicknamed Gaunts Ghosts because they're the only survivors from their home planet, which got destroyed, and they're really good at just sneaking around and surviving against the odds. Together, Gaunt and his ghosts, they're fighting in this huge military campaign called the Sabbat Worlds Crusade, which is all about trying to take back a group of planets from these really nasty, evil forces called Chaos. Chaos is like this corrupt supernatural threat that kind of twists people and worlds into monstrous versions of themselves. All fun and games, right? This series has been super popular. It's one of the biggest hits from the Black Library. As of a few years ago, there were already like 15 novels, don't quote me on that, but some extra short stories and background material too. It's a great way to get into Warhammer if you like military sci-fi with a lot of character depth and intense action. If I tried to go into every single book in the series, we're going to be here until the Emperor finally wakes up. And trust me, that's saying something. So instead, I think the best way to break this down is in 3 parts. So first, we'll talk about Ibraham Gaunt. He's the main character, like I said, kind of a mix between a battlefield commander and then a tough love mentor. Then we'll talk about the Tanith First and Only, the group of soldiers that he leads. They have a pretty cool backstory. And then after that, we'll get into the Sabbat Worlds Crusade, which is the massive war they're all caught up in. Don't worry if none of those names mean anything to you yet. If you're sat there thinking, oh my God, I'll walk you through it all step by step. Don't leave me just yet. Think of it like getting into this big fantasy universe, just with more lasers, more grit, way more skulls. And I'm about to bring you a mild level of entertainment. Anyway, if we start with the main guy, Ibraham Gaunt. He's kind of like a sci-fi blend of a war hero, a moral compass, a battlefield leader, all rolled into one. In the Warhammer universe, most people in his position are called commissars. They're known for being pretty ruthless. Think do your duty or else. But Gaunt, he's different. He's earned a reputation as the people's hero because he actually cares about the soldiers under his command and he leads with integrity, which is actually super rare in the future of 40k. Think of him as like Aragon, but in space. He commands a group called the Tanith First and Only. Sometimes, just like I said, Gaunts Ghosts. They're part of the Astra Militarum, which is basically the Warhammer version of a massive galaxy-spanning army made up of just regular humans. Think no superpowers, no fancy armour, just grit, guts, lots of lasguns. Now, Gaunt, he didn't always have that command. He was originally given control of 3 regiments, basically big groups of soldiers, from a planet called Tanith, kind of like a quiet, forested farming world. But just as things were getting started, a massive enemy force from something called Chaos, think evil space demons and corrupted humans, they showed up and they wiped out the planet from orbit. Gaunt managed to get 1 regiment off world, the First, before the planet was just completely destroyed. Since they were the only survivors of this event, that's how they became known as Tanith First and Only. I told you I was taught you through this step by step. They started, I hope that I made that make sense. They started off as like a scrappy, under-equipped group that a lot of people thought wouldn't last long. But Gaunt believed in them. He trained them hard. He turned them into one of the most elite fighting forces in the entire campaign that they were part of, the Sabbat Worlds Crusade. But we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail in a bit, because otherwise too much information is going to... Right, Gaunt led them through all kinds of brutal battles, and they even ended up guarding a reborn imperial saint, like an actual miracle-performing holy figure. Later, Gaunt and his regiment, they got stuck in something called the Warp. Think of the Warp as like a dangerous parallel dimension used for faster-than-light travel. And then they went missing for like a decade. But when they finally returned, Gaunt found out he'd been promoted after being presumed dead, and that his tactics had actually turned the tide of the entire war while he was gone. So yeah, just legend status unlocked. Level up instantly. Despite the horrors he'd seen, Gaunt's known for being one of the few leaders in the Imperium who fights for what's right, not just what's ordered. He leads with his heart, not fear. And in a universe like Warhammer, it is seriously rare. So we'll dive into the Tanith First and Only, and who they are, and why they matter so much in this war later on in the video. But right now, I think if we go back to Gaunt's early life, because he didn't exactly have a heartwarming childhood. So let's start. He was born on a planet called Manzipur, and his dad was a high-ranking officer in an elite military unit, basically like this well-respected regiment in the human army known as the Astra Militarum. Like a lot of commissars, they're stern, usually terrifying officers who keep soldiers in line, but Gaunt, he was then orphaned at a young age. His father was killed in action while defending humanity from orcs, just the big green boys. After his father's death, Gaunt was then sent to a place which is kind of like super intense military boarding school for orphans of fallen imperial officers. It's here that future commissars, officers, and other leaders, they're trained both in combat and in loyalty to the Imperium. Now, Gaunt, he was occasionally visited by a family friend, General Dersius, and he claimed to be like an uncle to him. He was the same guy who'd commanded Gaunt's father, told Gaunt that his dad had died a hero fighting the orcs, but as you might guess, the story wasn't the whole truth. It never is, right? So if you fast forward a bit, as a young trainee, it's called a cadet commissar, Gaunt was assigned to serve under a seasoned officer named Oktar. Now, Oktar was one of the few commissars who wasn't a brutal disciplinarian. He believed in inspiring loyalty, not just fear. Gaunt really looked up to him. And when Oktar was poisoned by orcs and died, Gaunt inherited his full commissar rank right there at his mentor's deathbed. He then served with a new regiment, leading them through some major battles, including a key victory on a world called Balhort, which was like a big win for the Imperium in the Sabbat Worlds Crusade. This is the sort of, like I mentioned, like a massive military campaign to take back a whole region from the galaxy, from Chaos. Basically, like I said, Chaos, to try and make it make sense, it's like the Imperium's mortal enemies. They're all twisted by evil gods from another dimension, if you think back to the Warp. So the Warp is twisting them. I'm making this confusing now. Let's draw a line. During this time, Gaunt had a run-in with a captive girl who'd been warp-touched. So basically, she'd been affected by the chaos or exposed to dangerous psychic energy. Now, while talking with her, he learned something shocking. His father hadn't died in battle the way he was told. He'd been abandoned, left to die by none other than General Dersius, the same man who claimed to be like an uncle to him. Proper, like, Lion King Scar betrayal moment. Long live the king. Not long after, Gaunt and Dersius, they ended up in the same war zone. So Gaunt, now a full commissar, challenged him to an honour duel, which is like a formal fight to the death. using chainswords. Yes, like swords with chainsaw blades. It's Warhammer. It's cool. Gaunt, he won and he avenged his father, but he did nearly die in the process. He was left with this massive scar across his stomach, and unsurprisingly, that didn't exactly endear him to everybody else who just now hated him for killing their commander. But Gaunt's bravery and skill, they didn't go unnoticed. His actions caught the attention of War Master Slado, the top military leader of the Sabbat Worlds Crusade. Gaunt was invited to some of the inner circle meetings, even a private dinner with Slado himself before a major battle. At that dinner, Slado made a powerful gesture. He made everyone present swear a blood oath to protect Saint Sabbat, this kind of like holy figure who had miraculously returned to lead the Imperium in this dark time. This oath would shape much of Gaunt's future, and from there his story only gets more intense. And in a minute I'll obviously touch a little bit on Balhort before going into Tanith First and Only, but it kind of gives you a solid picture on sort of like where he came from, what drives him, why he's a unique figure in the Warhammer universe. Wink wink, nudge nudge, Henry Cavill, if you're watching this. I mean, if you are and you want to feature on my tiny channel, just let me know. I make a great cup of tea. We're all brilliant here. Think about it, yeah? After Gaunt avenged his father by defeating General Dersius, he continued serving with the regiment that he'd been with since the early days. But by now, he was like a top-ranking political officer assigned to them. Basically, he's in charge of both the battlefield morale, making sure no one in the ranks stepped out of line. Though again, Gaunt was never the shoot you for blinking wrong kind of type. One of the biggest turning points in Gaunt's early career, it came during the battle for a planet called Balhort. Now this was like a major fight in the Sabbat Worlds Crusade, which was, like I mentioned, a huge imperial campaign to reclaim a whole chunk of the galaxy from chaos. He fought right on the front lines alongside War Master Slado, that top general running the whole crusade, and in this brutal, swampy region known as the Mud Lakes. It was his proudest moment up to that point. Under his leadership, he pulled off some huge wins. His unit, they took down Chaos assault carriers, who are like massive enemy troop transports. They broke through enemy fortifications at the Oligarchy Gate, and they destroyed the Tower of the Plutocrat, which is like a major stronghold. Their victory, it basically opened the door for the Imperial forces to move deeper into enemy territory, which was a huge deal, both strategically and, of course, symbolically. But the victory did come with a heavy cost. War Master Slado was mortally wounded in the fighting, and as he lay dying, he gave Gaunt one final gift, another deathbed promotion, this time to the rare and powerful rank of Colonel-Commissar, which meant Gaunt now had the authority to both lead troops and act as their commissar, which is not a common combination in the Warhammer universe. And he didn't just give Gaunt the promotion, he gave him command over 3 full regiments of Imperial troops. Now, on top of that, he gave those regiments a special reward called the Right of Settlement. Now, what that means is, essentially, one of those regiments helped conquer a world from chaos. They'd earn the right to retire there and then build their lives. Now, this was a huge deal for the soldiers from Tanith, especially since their home planet had been destroyed. Now that promise, the chance of a new beginning, it became a powerful motivator for the troops under Gaunt's command. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was earning a future. So yeah, between the victories, the leadership, and the final gift from a dying War Master, Gaunt's legend, I think it really started to take shape at this point, and then that set the stage for everything that then followed with the Tanith First and Only. So after Gaunt got command of the 3 regiments from the planet Tanith, things went sideways quite fast. So just as the troops were being organised, Tanith was hit with a big surprise attack from Chaos. Remember the evil reality warping bad guys of the Warhammer universe. Now Gaunt, he made the hard call to evacuate instead of letting them die in a hopeless fight. Now, it saved lives, but the people who escaped were the only survivors. From 3 full regiments, fewer than 4,000 made it off the planet, and not a single officer. Gaunt took those survivors and he reorganised them into 1 regiment, the Tanith First and Only. They were nicknamed Gaunts Ghosts because of how quiet and sneaky they were, and because they were all that was left of their world. Now, at first, many of the soldiers, they hated him for making them abandon their home, but over time, they came to respect him. He fought beside them, he cared about them, and he proved himself time and time again. Over the years, the Ghosts became one of the most elite units in the Sabbat World's crusade. Fighting in brutal battles across multiple war-torn planets, Gaunt was known for his unusual leadership style. He wasn't your typical harsh commissar. He inspired loyalty instead of fear, and that made him popular with his troops. But also, it made higher-ups in the Imperium nervous. At one point, the regiment, they'd lost so many soldiers that they had to merge with another unit, the 81st Belladon Recon, so forming a new combined force called the 81st First. It was a weird situation politically, and Gaunt was almost pushed out of command, but he eventually earned his way back into leadership, again, just by being the guy who leads from the front and gets things done. He returned to a chaos-held world called Geryon, where he'd previously survived a nightmare mission to help free it once and for all. Now, that mission involved teaming up with local resistance fighters and even helping the Inquisition, which is the Imperium's secret police, in their fight against the chaos corruption. He told them straight up that the only way to resist chaos is through what he called the armor of contempt, which is basically unwavering moral strength. Later on, during a siege on a planet called Jago, Gaunt was captured and then tortured, by Chaos forces. Everyone presumed him dead, and his second in command, Major Rawn, took over. But Goat, he is the goat, but anyway, but he was rescued, Gaunt was rescued by a dramatic mission and survived, but he was blinded and left in a rough shape. He was promised cybernetic eyes as a replacement, but all he really cared about was making sure his regiment wouldn't be thrown into a hopeless situation again. Through everything, through betrayal, loss, politics, war, even eyesight, he stayed true to his principles. He's a rare kind of hero in this universe full of grim choices, and I think that's why Gaunts Ghosts, it's not just a war story, it's loyalty, it's sacrifice, and what it means to hold on to your humanity when everything else is just quite literally falling apart. If Henry Cavill is serious about making 40k into a successful live-action universe, and he clearly is, then I think Gaunts Ghost, it might just be the perfect place to start. Why? Because unlike most parts of Warhammer 40k, they dive straight into genetically engineered super soldiers, galaxy-sized politics, and ancient alien gods, and it can be overwhelming. Gaunts Ghosts, it's just about regular humans. We've got no power armor, no psychic lightning, just ordinary soldiers, scared, angry, loyal, stubborn, just doing what they can to survive in the most nightmarish war zone imaginable. At its heart, I guess it's like Band of Brothers meets grim dark sci-fi. You've got Colonel-Commissar Ibram Gaunt, this rare figure of the Imperium, a leader who actually cares about the people under his command. He doesn't win through fear or blind obedience. He just leads from the front, gets covered in mud and blood with his men, and then he earns their trust. And I think that alone, it makes him compelling. In a universe where most authority figures, they're terrifying or corrupt, Gaunt's this beacon of humanity. And I think that's a story you can build a universe around. The Tanith First and Only, Gaunts Ghosts, they're survivors of a planetary apocalypse. Their homeworld, Tanith, was destroyed by a chaos fleet before they even got a chance to defend it. And Gaunt made this impossible call to evacuate rather than let them die in vain. And though they resented him at first, over time he forged them into one of the most elite, loyal, and cunning regiments in the Astra Militarum. Their nickname, it comes from how stealthy and effective they are and how much they've lost. Each ghost has their own story. From Larkin, this brilliant but mentally unstable sniper, to Rawn, the second in command who openly despises Gaunt but follows him anyway, to Corbeck, this big-hearted veteran who keeps the unit grounded. It's a character-driven drama wrapped in brutal military action. And you don't need to know a single thing about Warhammer to connect with these characters. They're soldiers, they're survivors and outsiders. And this is something that anyone could relate to and understand, even if they don't know what a bolter is or what the warp is or even what chaos is. Plus, The backdrop is epic. The Sabbat Worlds Crusade, it gives you a reason to travel to new planets in every episode, because I'm hoping it's a series. Hive cities, jungle death worlds, fortress moons, each one overrun by the forces of chaos who are just as horrifying as you'd hope. You've got demons, you've got cultists, you've got twisted former humans, and brutal warlords, just enemies that let you dip into the weird and monstrous side of 40k without overwhelming new viewers. And the best part is that it sets the stage. You can show the human cost of war before introducing the rest of the universe. Space Marines, the Inquisition, the Warp, the Emperor, all of it, all through the eyes of people just trying to survive. And I think that gives you like a grounded, emotional entry point without dumbing down the source material. I think if Henry Cavill, he wants to bring Warhammer to life in a way that just hits hard, stays true to the lore, and then brings in new fans without scaring them off. Gaunts Ghosts, it feels like the one to lead the way. But please let me know what you think. I've seen some great comments so far on my other video regarding Eisenhorn. So if you had to choose between the two, which one are you voting for? I might be swaying more towards Gaunts Ghosts. I might be. But anyway, if you stuck with me this far, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate it. Please do all those things you need to do only one time to support my tiny channel, and I hope to see you on the next video.